The crack of gunfire still echoed in my ears as I pressed my palm against the warm, sticky wetness spreading across my side. Blood seeped through my fingers, staining the cream silk of my dress a violent crimson. The ambush had come from nowhere. One moment Dominic and I were leaving the restaurant, his hand possessively at the small of my back, and the next, glass was shattering around us as bullets tore through the night. "Isabella." Dominic's voice cut through the chaos, but it sounded distant, muffled by the ringing in my ears. I tried to focus on his face, those sharp features I knew so well, but my vision blurred at the edges. The sidewalk rushed up to meet me, cold concrete against my cheek. Through the haze of pain, I saw Dominic frozen 10 feet away, his usually commanding presence reduced to paralyzed shock. His men scrambled around us, returning fire, shouting orders, but he just stood there, his gray eyes fixed on me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure, helpless terror. Then there was movement from the alley, a blur of motion that resolved into a figure. Young, lean, moving with desperate purpose. The boy couldn't have been more than 17, his clothes worn and patched, dark hair falling into eyes that blazed with determination. He dropped to his knees beside me without hesitation, his hands surprisingly gentle as they assessed my wound. "Don't move," he said, his voice steady, despite the gunfire still crackling around us. "The bullet's still in there, but it missed the major organs. I can help you, but we need to move now." I tried to speak, to ask who he was, why he was helping, but only a wet cough emerged. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. The boy, barely more than a child really, made a decision. In one fluid motion, he scooped me into his arms as if I weighed nothing, though I could see the strain in his young face. "Wait!" Dominic's paralysis finally broke, and he lunged forward. "Where are you taking her?" The boy's eyes met Dominic's, and something passed between them. A flicker of recognition that was gone before I could process it. "There's a doctor," the boy said tersely. "Underground clinic, 2 blocks south. She doesn't have time for a hospital. They'll ask questions, waste time. Follow if you want, but I'm going now." He didn't wait for permission. With me cradled against his chest, he took off running, navigating the back alleys with the confidence of someone who'd spent his life in these shadows. I could hear Dominic shouting behind us, ordering his men to follow, to clear the path, but my focus narrowed to the boy's face above me. There was something familiar about the set of his jaw, the way he held his head when concentrating. "What's your name?" I managed to whisper, tasting copper with each word. "Nico," he said, not breaking stride as he vaulted over a pile of garbage bags. "Just hold on, okay? We're almost there." The underground clinic materialized from the darkness, a nondescript door beneath a flickering neon sign advertising fortune-telling. Nico kicked it open without ceremony, revealing a surprisingly clean medical facility hidden beneath the grime of the alley. An elderly man with steady hands and sharp eyes looked up from sterilizing instruments. "Gunshot," Nico said simply, laying me on the examination table with infinite care. "Left side, close range. She's lost a lot of blood." The doctor, if that's what he truly was, moved with practiced efficiency, cutting away my ruined dress without regard for modesty. I heard Dominic burst through the door, his presence filling the small space with barely contained violence. "If she dies," he began, but Nico stepped between him and the table, his slight frame dwarfing next to Dominic's broad shoulders. "Let the man work," Nico said quietly. "Threats won't stop the bleeding." I watched through a haze of pain medication as Dominic's hands clenched into fists. No one spoke to him like that. No one dared. But something in Nico's steady gaze, in the protective way he positioned himself, made Dominic step back. The next hours blurred together, the sharp sting of the needle, the doctor's murmured instructions, the strange sense of floating as shock set in. Through it all, Nico stayed close, holding my hand when the pain grew too intense, murmuring reassurances in a voice that carried an odd mixture of street-rough edges and surprising gentleness. When I finally surfaced from the fog of medication and pain, weak sunlight filtered through grimy windows. I was in a different room, clean but sparse, with actual medical equipment humming quietly nearby. Dominic sat in a chair beside the narrow bed, his usually immaculate suit rumpled, stubble darkening his jaw. He looked like he'd aged years in a single night. "You're awake," he said, his voice rough. His hand found mine, squeezing perhaps too tightly. "I thought—" He broke off, unable to finish the sentence. "The boy," I whispered. "Nico. Where is he?" Dominic's expression tightened. "Outside. He refused to leave until he knew you were stable." A pause. "He saved your life, Isabella. Carried you through those alleys like you were made of spun glass. Found this place when I couldn't even move." The self-recrimination in his voice was new, unsettling. Dominic never showed weakness, never admitted failure. But I'd seen him in that moment, frozen as my blood pooled on the concrete, and we both knew the truth. When it mattered most, it had been a stranger who acted. "Bring him in," I said. "I want to thank him." Dominic hesitated, something flickering across his face, an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Then he nodded and went to the door. Nico entered slowly, looking younger in the daylight despite the wariness that never left his eyes. His clothes were stained with my blood, dried to rust brown on worn denim. "You saved my life," I said simply. "Why? You don't know us. You could have been killed." Nico shrugged, the gesture achingly young. "I was there. You needed help." His eyes darted to Dominic, then back to me. "Besides, I know who you are. Everyone in the neighborhood knows the Castellano family." "And yet you helped anyway," I mused. "Most people who recognized us would have run the other direction, too afraid of getting caught in crossfire or becoming a target themselves." "Where are your parents, Nico?" "Don't have any." The words were matter of fact, but I caught the tightening around his eyes. Been on my own since I was 10. 7 years. This child had survived 7 years alone on streets that chewed up grown men and spat them out. Something twisted in my chest that had nothing to do with the bullet wound. "You have medical training," I observed. "The way you assessed the wound, knew about the clinic." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You learn things when you have to. Helped out Doc Moretti sometimes in exchange for patching me up when I needed it. Picked up a few things." Dominic had been silent through this exchange, studying Nico with an intensity that would have made most people squirm. But the boy met his gaze steadily, chin lifted slightly in subtle defiance. "You need a place to stay," I heard myself saying. Both Dominic and Nico turned to stare at me. "I mean it. You saved my life. The least we can do is offer you a roof over your head while I recover. I'll need someone nearby who understands the medical aspects, and clearly, you have some knowledge." "Isabella?" Dominic's voice held a warning, but I squeezed his hand. "He saved my life when we were all useless," I said firmly. "I won't have him going back to the streets as reward for his courage." Nico's eyes widened, the careful mask slipping to reveal the child underneath. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," I interrupted. "It's a job, temporary while I heal. Help with my recovery, make sure I'm following doctor's orders. We'll pay you fairly, provide room and board." I watched the war play out across his young face, pride battling with practicality, suspicion wrestling with hope. His gaze flicked between Dominic and me, assessing, calculating risks, like someone far older than 17. "Temporary," he repeated slowly. "And I'm not anyone's servant. I helped because it was right, not because I want to fetch coffee for rich people." Despite the pain medication dulling my senses, I found myself smiling. This boy had spine. Agreed. Medical assistance only, though if you wanted to learn other skills while you're with us. I let the offer hang, watching understanding dawn in those sharp eyes. Skills that could lift him permanently off the streets, give him options beyond survival. Isabella, Dominic's voice was low, meant for my ears alone. We don't know anything about him. I turned to look at my husband, really look at him. 6 years of marriage had taught me to read the subtle signs others missed, the tension in his shoulders, the way his thumb rubbed against his index finger when agitated. But there was something else there now. Something in the way he kept glancing at Nico when he thought no one was watching. We know he saved my life, I said simply. That's enough for now. The first weeks passed in a haze of pain medication and careful movements. True to his word, Nico had moved into the guest wing of our Long Island estate, looking simultaneously overwhelmed and fiercely determined not to show it. I watched from my bed as he navigated the marble hallways with the same cautious awareness he'd shown in the city alleys, always noting exits, always conscious of who was where. Your blood pressure is better today, he informed me one morning, carefully removing the cuff from my arm. He'd taken to the medical equipment with surprising ease, reading my charts with the focused intensity of someone hungering for knowledge. But you're still pushing too hard. The doctor said minimal movement for another week. The doctor doesn't have an empire to help run, I replied, already reaching for the stack of papers Dominic's secretary had sent up. Nico's hand intercepted mine, gently but firmly moving the documents out of reach. The empire will survive without you for a few more days, he said, and there was something in his tone. Not quite scolding, but protective in a way that made me study him more closely. In the afternoon light streaming through the bedroom windows, I could see him clearly. The resemblance I'd noticed that first night wasn't my imagination. It was there in the way he tilted his head when thinking, the particular angle that was pure Dominic, the shape of his eyes, gray-green instead of Dominic's steel-gray, but the same distinctive almond shape, the way his hands moved when he was concentrating, precise, controlled, unconsciously elegant despite his rough upbringing. Tell me about your mother, I said suddenly, watching his hands still on the medical supplies he was organizing. Nico's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. Not much to tell. She died when I was 10. Lung infection that wouldn't go away. He resumed his organizing, but I caught the tightness around his mouth. She worked at the textile factory until she got too sick. Did her best. What was her name? Sophia. The name came soft, reverent. Sophia Ricci, she was. He paused, searching for words. She was kind. Even when things were bad, she'd find ways to make me laugh. Used to tell me stories about how things would be different someday. How I'd grow up strong and smart, make something of myself. I filed the name away carefully. Sophia Ricci. The textile factory would have employment records, and Dominic's connections could access almost anything. But I wouldn't go behind Nico's back. If my suspicions were correct, this truth would destroy him. She sounds wonderful, I said gently. You have her kindness. He looked up at me, startled. You don't know me well enough to say that. You saved a stranger's life at great personal risk. You've been nothing but patient and gentle through my recovery, even when I'm a difficult patient. That speaks to character, Nico. Character that someone instilled in you. Color touched his cheeks, and he turned away, busying himself with checking my IV line. She always said helping people was the only wealth that mattered, that the rich had money, but the poor had each other. A bitter smile twisted his lips. Didn't save her when she needed medicine we couldn't afford. The accusation hung in the air, not directed at me specifically, but at the world I represented. I thought of my own medicine cabinet, full of prescriptions I barely thought about, treatments that cost more than most people made in a month. "I'm sorry," I said simply. "That shouldn't have happened." He shrugged. That gesture I was beginning to recognize as his armor against emotion. Lots of things shouldn't happen, but they do. A knock interrupted us, and Dominic entered without waiting for permission. His eyes immediately found Nico, that same searching look I'd been noticing more frequently. Did he see it too? The echo of his own features in this boy's face? "How is she?" The question was directed at Nico, not me, and I filed that away as interesting. Dominic accepting anyone else's authority over my care was unprecedented. "Stubborn," Nico replied without missing a beat. "Trying to work when she should be resting. Blood pressure is improved, but still not ideal." Dominic's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Yes, that sounds like Isabella." He moved to my bedside, his hand finding mine automatically. "Perhaps you'll listen to him, since you certainly don't listen to me." "You tell me to rest while bringing me contracts to review," I pointed out. "Mixed messages, Caro." "The Ferretti situation needs your input," he said, already reaching for his jacket pocket where I could see documents peeking out. "No," Nico's voice was firm. Both Dominic and I turned to stare at him. "No business for another 3 days minimum. Doctor's orders, which I'm here to enforce. If you want to undermine her recovery, you'll need to find someone else to help with her care." The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. I held my breath, waiting for Dominic's reaction. No one dictated terms to Dominic Castellano. His men jumped when he spoke. The city's most powerful figures deferred to him, but this 17-year-old boy stood his ground, chin raised in a gesture so familiar it made my chest tight. Dominic studied him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he slid the papers back into his pocket. 3 days, he agreed. "But then we need her input on several pressing matters." Nico nodded, apparently satisfied. "I'll reassess in 3 days." After Dominic left, acquiescing to a teenager's medical demands with surprising grace, I found myself watching Nico more carefully. He moved around my room with increasing confidence, no longer hesitating before touching the expensive furnishings, no longer startled by the household staff who brought meals or fresh linens. "You're adapting well," I observed as he prepared my afternoon medications with practiced efficiency. "It's just a place," he said, but I caught him running his fingers over the soft cotton of the towels, saw the way he paused sometimes to look out the windows at the manicured grounds. "Bigger than I'm used to, but walls are walls." "And the staff? They're treating you well?" His hand stilled. "Why wouldn't they?" "Because sometimes they can be. Particular about hierarchy. And you're in an unusual position. Not quite staff, not quite guest." "I'm the kid from the streets who's playing nurse," he said bluntly. "I know what they think. But Maria brings me extra food, says I'm too skinny. And Anthony, the driver, has been teaching me about the cars when I have free time." A small smile touched his lips. "Did you know the Bentley has a 12-cylinder engine? Smoothest ride he's ever driven, he says." I filed away this information too. My staff were taking to him, mothering him in Maria's case. That spoke well of both them and him. "Nico," I said carefully, "have you ever wondered about your father?" The question landed like a physical blow. His whole body went rigid, and when he looked at me, his eyes were guarded, almost hostile. "No," he said flatly. "My mother was all I needed. All I had." "I didn't mean—" "He wasn't there," Nico continued, his voice harder than I'd heard it. "When she was sick, when we couldn't afford medicine, when I had to steal food just to eat. So no, I don't wonder about him. He's nothing to me. But I heard the lie in it, saw the pain he was trying to bury under anger. Every child wondered, especially a child who'd grown up watching other families, complete units that he could never be part of. "I'm sorry," I said. I shouldn't have asked. He took a breath, visibly pulling himself together. It's fine. People ask sometimes. They see a kid with no father and think there's some tragic story. His smile was bitter. The only tragedy is that he was a coward who left a pregnant woman to fend for herself. The words hit me like ice water. Pregnant. Did he know more than he was saying? But no. The pain in his eyes was too real, too raw. This was the story he'd constructed to make sense of abandonment, not knowledge of facts. That evening, I waited until I was alone to make the call. My personal lawyer, discreet and efficient, answered on the second ring. I need you to look into someone, I said quietly. Sofia Ricci. She would have worked at the Martinelli textile factory about 18 years ago. Died 7 years ago from illness. She had a son. And what exactly are we looking for, Mrs. Castellano? I stared at the ceiling, weighing my words. Connections. Any connections to my husband's business dealings around that time. Be discreet. Very discreet. Understood. I'll have preliminary information within 48 hours. I ended the call and closed my eyes. If I was right, God, if I was right, how many lives would shatter with the truth? The truth arrived faster than I'd anticipated. My lawyer, efficient as always, had compiled a devastating dossier that I read in the pre-dawn darkness while the house slept. Sofia Ricci, age 19, hired at the Martinelli textile factory in September 2006. The same factory that had been under Dominic's protection at the time, one of his first legitimate business fronts when he was still establishing his empire. The photos made my hands tremble. Sofia had been beautiful in that effortless way, dark hair, laughing eyes, a smile that suggested she found joy despite her circumstances. There was a company event photo from December 2006, a holiday party. Dominic was there, younger, his hair without the distinguished silver at the temples, but unmistakably him. And Sofia, radiant in a simple red dress, standing just close enough to him that their arms might have been touching. The timeline was damning. Sofia's employment ended abruptly in March 2007. Nico's birthday, according to the medical records my lawyer had somehow obtained, was November 15th, 2007. I did the math with a sick feeling in my stomach. Conception would have been February, just before Sofia left the factory. Just before Dominic had started courting me. I remembered that spring with painful clarity. Dominic had appeared in my father's restaurant like something out of a movie. Dangerous, magnetic, utterly focused on winning me. I'd been 23, fresh from college, helping manage the family business. He'd courted me with an intensity that had swept away all my objections, all my father's warnings. We were married by Christmas that same year, all while Sofia Ricci was somewhere in the city, her belly growing with his child. You're up early. Nico's voice from the doorway made me slam the folder shut, my heart racing. How long had he been standing there? Couldn't sleep, I managed, sliding the folder under my pillow. The wound aches at night. He moved into the room with that quiet grace, already reaching for the pain medication. You should have called me. That's why I'm here. As he adjusted my pillows and checked the healing incision, I studied his profile. God, how had I not seen it immediately? That nose was pure Dominic, Roman and proud, the way his forehead creased when he concentrated. I'd seen that expression 1,000 times on my husband's face. You're staring, Nico said, without looking up from the bandage he was changing. Sorry. I was just thinking how much you've done for us, for me. He shrugged, that defensive gesture. It's a job. Is it? I challenged gently, because from where I'm sitting it looks like compassion. His hand stilled for just a moment. Maybe it's both, he admitted quietly. I've been on the receiving end of kindness so rarely. Feels good to be the one giving it for once. The words twisted in my chest. This boy, Dominic's son, talking about the rarity of kindness while his father lived in luxury just rooms away. The anger that had been simmering since I'd read the file threatened to boil over. "Nico," I said carefully, "what do you remember about the time before your mother got sick? When you were younger?" He settled into the chair beside my bed, apparently deciding I needed company more than medical care. "Not much. We moved around a lot when I was small. I remember being hungry sometimes, but she always made sure I ate first. She'd pretend she wasn't hungry, but I knew better." "Did she ever mention your father? Even in anger?" Nico's face darkened. "Once. She'd been drinking, the only time I ever saw her drunk. It was my birthday. I think I was 7. She was crying. Kept saying she was sorry I didn't have a father like the other kids. Said he was a powerful man who couldn't be bothered with complications." His voice turned bitter. "That's what we were. Complications. Powerful man. Complications." The words could describe 1,000 men in New York, but paired with the timeline, the factory connection. "She loved you very much," I said, meaning it. Whatever Sophia's relationship with Dominic had been, her devotion to her son was clear in every story Nico told. "She did her best," Nico agreed. "Used to tell me I was destined for great things, that I had important blood in my veins, whatever that meant. I think she was just trying to make me feel better about not having a father. Important blood." My stomach clenched. She had told him, in her own way, planted seeds of truth without revealing the whole story. A knock interrupted my churning thoughts. Maria entered with the breakfast tray, her motherly face brightening when she saw Nico. "Ah, good. You make sure she eats everything, yes? She's too thin, needs strength." "I'm right here," I protested, but Maria was already fussing over Nico, pressing a second tray into his hands. "You too, young man, all skin and bones. How you going to take care of others if you don't take care of yourself?" I watched Nico accept her fussing with an awkward grace, clearly unused to maternal attention, but hungry for it in a way that made my heart ache. After Maria left, we ate in companionable silence, but my mind was racing. I needed to tell Dominic what I'd discovered. But how? And what would he do? The Dominic I knew was possessive about family, about legacy. He'd want his son. But would Nico want him? This boy who'd survived on anger at an absent father, who'd built his identity around being abandoned? "Mrs. Castellano?" Nico's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Isabella, you're crying." I touched my cheek, surprised to find it wet. "I'm sorry. Just overwhelmed, I suppose." He handed me a tissue, his young face creased with concern. "Is it the pain? Do you need—" "No," I cut him off gently. "Not that kind of pain." He studied me with those two knowing eyes. "The kind that medicine can't fix?" "Something like that." We sat quietly for a moment. Then Nico spoke again. "Can I tell you something strange?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Sometimes, being here, in this house." He paused, searching for words. "It feels familiar. Not the luxury. I've never experienced anything like this, but something else. Like déjà vu, but different." He shook his head, laughing at himself. "That doesn't make sense." It made perfect sense. Blood calling to blood, some primal recognition that transcended logic. I'd heard of such things, adoptees feeling drawn to biological family before knowing the connection, siblings separated at birth, experiencing instant recognition. "Trust your instincts," I said carefully. "They've kept you alive this long." He nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning behind those gray-green eyes. Nico was too smart, too observant. How long before he started noticing what I had? Before he saw Dominic's gestures and his own movements, recognized the face in the mirror? That afternoon, Dominic visited during Nico's break. He sat on the edge of my bed, his hand covering mine, but his eyes kept drifting to the door. "He's remarkable," Dominic said quietly. "The boy, to survive what he has, to maintain that. Integrity." "His mother raised him well," I said, watching his reaction carefully. Something flickered across Dominic's face, too quick to identify. "She must have been a strong woman. Sophia Ricci." I let the name fall between us like a stone into still water, watching the ripples spread across his features. Dominic went absolutely still. Not the stillness of surprise, but the careful control of a man who'd learned to hide his reactions. "How do you know that name?" "The same way I know she worked at your textile factory. The same way I know she left suddenly in March 2007, already pregnant." My voice was steady, but my heart hammered against my ribs. "The same way I know that Nico was born in November of that year. Isabella. He's yours." The words came out flat, matter of fact, though inside I was screaming. "The dates line up perfectly. And God, Dominic, he looks just like you. How do you not see it?" Dominic's hand tightened on mine almost painfully. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me," I hissed, yanking my hand away. "Explain how you had a son with another woman while you were courting me. Explain how you abandoned them both. Explain how your child grew up hungry while you built your empire on the very ground he was sleeping on." I didn't know. The words came out raw, desperate. "Isabella, I swear to you, I didn't know about the boy." I stared at him, searching his face for the lie. Dominic was many things, dangerous, ruthless when necessary. But he'd never lied to me. Not about things that mattered. "Sophia never told me," he continued, his voice low and urgent. "We had a brief arrangement. She was young, beautiful, willing. I was establishing my power, taking what I wanted." Self-disgust colored his words. "When she left the factory, I assumed she'd found better employment. I never even looked for her." "A brief arrangement," I repeated, tasting acid. "Is that what you called it while you were sending me roses? While you were charming my father, promising to cherish his daughter?" "I ended things with her before I ever met you," Dominic insisted. "You have to believe that. The moment I saw you in that restaurant, everything else ceased to exist. You became my world, Isabella. You still are." "Your world," I said bitterly, "while your son ate from garbage cans, while his mother died from an illness that proper medical care could have prevented. Your world is built on the bones of the people you've forgotten, Dominic." He flinched as if I'd struck him. Good. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting, the way Nico had hurt every day of his young life. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "Tell him? Destroy whatever peace he's found here? He hates his father. He's made that clear. Sometimes the truth does more harm than good." "The truth always comes out," I said. "Always. And when it does, because it will, Dominic, would you rather he hear it from you, or discover it some other way?" 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. I grew stronger each day, finally able to move around the house without Nico hovering protectively. But with mobility came the unbearable weight of the secret I carried. Every interaction between Dominic and Nico was torture to witness. The careful distance Dominic maintained, the unconscious mimicry in their gestures, the way they both commanded a room despite their different circumstances. I'd taken to spending my afternoons in the library, the one place in our sprawling estate where I could think clearly. That's where Nico found me one overcast Tuesday, staring at a photo album I shouldn't have been looking at. "Wedding photos?" he asked, settling uninvited into the chair across from me. The ease with which he now moved through our home both warmed and troubled me. "From 6 years ago," I confirmed, not closing the album. Let him look. Let him see. He leaned forward, studying the images with his characteristic intensity. You looked happy, he observed. Both of you. We were, I said simply. Or I thought we were. His finger hovered over a group photo, the wedding party arranged on the marble steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Big wedding. Lot of important-looking people. Dominic doesn't do anything small, I said, watching his face. When he commits to something, it's absolute. Must be nice, Nico murmured. That certainty, knowing you belong somewhere so completely that you can make promises about forever. The wistfulness in his voice broke my heart. You belong here now, I said firmly. For as long as you want. He looked up sharply. The job was temporary. You're healed. I should start looking for... No. The word came out harsher than I intended. Nico, you're not just some employee. You saved my life. You've become... I paused, choosing my words carefully. You've become important to us. To me. His eyes, so like Dominic's in that moment, searched my face. Why? The question was barely a whisper. I'm nobody, a street kid who got lucky. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you're my husband's son, I thought desperately. Because every day I see you struggle with feelings of abandonment that shouldn't exist. Because you should have grown up in this house, should have had every advantage, should have known you were loved. Because I see who you are, I said instead. Your strength, your compassion, your intelligence. Because you deserve more than the hand you've been dealt. He was quiet for a long moment, absently turning pages in the album. Then he froze, his whole body going rigid. I looked down to see what had caught his attention. A candid shot from the reception, Dominic in profile, laughing at something his brother had said. This man, Nico said slowly. I've seen him before. My heart stopped. At the restaurant that night. No. His voice was strange, distant. Before that, when I was young, maybe 6 or 7. His finger traced Dominic's profile in the photo. He came to our apartment once, late at night. My mother made me hide in the closet, but I peeked through the crack. I couldn't breathe. What happened? They argued, Nico continued, his eyes unfocused, lost in memory. She was crying, begging him for something. Money, I think. For medicine. She was already getting sick. He gave her an envelope, but he was angry. Said she knew the agreement, that she wasn't to contact him again. The room spun around me. Dominic had known. He'd lied to me. She called him by name, Nico whispered. Dominic. I remembered because she made me promise never to say it out loud, never to go looking for a man with that name. His eyes snapped back to mine, pupils dilated with dawning realization. But that's impossible. Your husband couldn't be. Nico. I reached for him, but he jerked away, stumbling to his feet. No. The word was sharp, desperate. No, that's not, he can't be. He looked between me and the photo, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Did you know? The question hit like a physical blow. I suspected, recently, the resemblance, the timeline. How long? His voice cracked. How long have you known? 2 weeks, I admitted. I had to be sure before. 2 weeks. He laughed, but it was an ugly sound. 2 weeks of what? Watching me serve coffee to my father? Letting me play at being part of a family that didn't want me? That's not what this was, I insisted, standing despite the pull of healing tissue. Nico, please. He knew. The words came out broken. He knew about me and he left anyway, gave my dying mother money to stay quiet and walked away, his hands clenched into fists. And you knew and said nothing. Let me believe. His voice broke entirely. I wanted to protect you, I said desperately, until I knew how to handle. Protect me? He whirled on me, and for the first time, I saw Dominic's temper in him, white-hot and dangerous. From what? The truth? From knowing that my father was right there, watching me tend to his wife, and felt nothing. He doesn't know, I said quickly. Nico, he doesn't know you're his son. I haven't told him about the connection. Liar. The word was quiet, venomous. You think I'm stupid? You think I haven't noticed how he looks at me? The way he goes still when I enter a room? His laugh was bitter. I thought it was suspicion, thought he didn't trust the street kid near his precious wife. But it's guilt, isn't it? I reached for him again, but he backed away, knocking into a side table. The lamp wobbled, crashed to the floor, the sound sharp in the suffocating silence. I need to leave, he said, his voice steadier now, resolved. I'll pack my things. You're not going anywhere. Dominic's voice from the doorway made us both freeze. He stood there in his shirt sleeves, clearly having rushed from his office at the sound of breaking glass. His eyes took in the scene, the scattered photo album, Nico's defensive stance, my tears. Don't, Nico said, his voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare pretend you care now. Dominic stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. You know. It wasn't a question. Nico's bitter laugh was answer enough. I recognized you, Dominic continued, his voice carefully controlled. That night in the alley, even covered in Isabella's blood, even in the chaos, I knew. The way you moved, the set of your shoulders. You're Sophia's son. I'm nobody's son, Nico spat. I raised myself, buried my mother alone while you sat in your mansion counting your blood money. Nico, I started, but Dominic raised a hand, silencing me. You're right, he said simply. I failed you, failed your mother, failed in the most fundamental way a man can fail. The admission seemed to stun Nico into silence. He'd been prepared for denials, for excuses, not this quiet acceptance of guilt. I was 24, Dominic continued, building my empire, taking what I wanted without thought for consequences. Your mother was... He paused, pain flickering across his features. She was kind, too kind for the world I inhabited. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was already pursuing Isabella, already planning a future that didn't include complications. Complications, Nico repeated, the word like poison. That's what I was. That's what I thought you were, Dominic corrected. I was wrong. I've been wrong about many things, but none more than this. He came to see her, I said quietly. Both men turned to me. Nico remembers. You gave her money for medicine. Dominic's composure cracked slightly. She contacted me when she got sick, said she wasn't asking for herself, but for the boy. I thought... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair in a gesture startlingly similar to Nico's own habit. I thought money would solve it. Money always solved things. I never even asked your name. Would it have mattered? Nico challenged. If you'd known my name, would you have stayed? Would you have been there when she died? When I was sleeping in abandoned buildings, stealing food, fighting off predators? I don't know, Dominic admitted. I want to say yes, but I was a different man then, selfish, focused only on power. His eyes found mine. It took Isabella to teach me that power means nothing without family. Family, Nico laughed bitterly. Is that what we're calling this? You want to play father now that I'm convenient? Now that I saved your wife's life? I want, Dominic said slowly, to try to make right what I made wrong. If you'll let me." Nico stared at him, and I could see the war raging behind his eyes. The abandoned child, desperate for a father, battling against 17 years of survival instincts, screaming that vulnerability meant death. "You want to make it right?" Nico's voice was deadly quiet. "Bring her back. Bring back my mother. Bring back the childhood you stole from me. Bring back every night I wondered why I wasn't good enough for my own father to want me." "I can't," Dominic said simply. "But I can give you a future. Education, opportunities, a home." "I don't want your charity," Nico snarled. "It's not charity," I interjected. "It's your birthright." Both men turned to me, and I stood straighter despite the pull of my healing wound. "You are Dominic Castellano's son," I said firmly. "That comes with privileges, yes, but also responsibilities. Dangers. The people who shot me, they'd use you against Dominic in a heartbeat if they knew. Like it or not, Nico, you're part of this family now. The only question is whether you'll let us protect you." "Protect me?" Nico's voice broke on the words. Where was that protection when I needed it? When she needed it? "It wasn't there," Dominic said, "and I'll regret that until my dying day. But it's here now, if you'll accept it." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 17 years of absence and abandonment. Nico stood rigid, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths, while Dominic waited with the patience of a man accustomed to negotiations where everything was at stake. I remained between them, a bridge across a chasm that seemed impossibly wide. "You think it's that simple?" Nico finally spoke, his voice raw. "You acknowledge me now, and we play happy family? Pretend the past never happened?" "No," Dominic said quietly. "I think it's complicated. I think it's painful. And I think it's necessary." Necessary. Nico tested the word like it was foreign. "For who? You? Your conscience?" "For all of us," I interjected. "Nico, secrets like this, they don't stay buried. They poison everything they touch. Look at us now, all of us bleeding from wounds that should have healed years ago." Nico's eyes found mine, and the betrayal there made me flinch. "You advocated for me, made me believe I mattered. Was any of it real, or was it all just guilt over who I really am?" "Everything was real," I said fiercely. "My gratitude, my affection, my desire to see you thrive. None of that had anything to do with your parentage." "But you knew," he insisted. "These past 2 weeks, you knew and you watched me." He broke off, turning away. "She was trying to protect you," Dominic said. "Isabella understands better than most how dangerous my world can be. She wanted to be certain before exposing you to it." "Your world," Nico repeated bitterly. "The world that killed my mother." "Poverty killed your mother," Dominic corrected, his voice hardening. "Poverty I could have prevented. Should have prevented. But don't romanticize the alternative, Nico. Growing up as my acknowledged son would have meant kidnapping attempts, assassination risks, being used as leverage against me. Your mother understood that. It's why she agreed to stay away." "She didn't agree to anything," Nico exploded. "She loved you. I could see it every time she got drunk enough to forget I was listening. She'd cry and say your name like it was a prayer and a curse all at once. You broke her heart, and then you broke her body by letting her work herself to death." The words hung in the air like shrapnel. Dominic's face had gone pale, his usual composure cracking under the weight of his son's pain. "You're right," he said simply. "I broke her, and I broke you, and I have no right to ask for forgiveness or a second chance, but I'm asking anyway." "Why?" The question came out desperate. "Why now? Because I saved your wife? Because you owe me? Because you're my blood," Dominic said. "Because every time I look at you, I see what I could have been if I'd made better choices. Because Isabella is right. You deserve your birthright, dangerous as it may be. And because I added softly. You've already proven you belong in this family. The way you protected me, cared for me. That's what family does, Nico. That's who you are, regardless of whether you accept the Castellano name. Nico sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 17 years. I don't know how to be someone's son, he admitted quietly. I know how to survive, how to fight, how to run. But this? He gestured helplessly between himself and Dominic. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I, Dominic admitted, surprising us both. I know how to be a husband, a leader, a provider. But a father to a nearly grown son I abandoned? That's uncharted territory. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something besides anger in Nico's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or hope. If, Nico said slowly, and I'm not saying yes, but if I stayed, what would that look like? Would you parade me around as your bastard? Introduce me to your associates as the son you just discovered? You would be introduced as my son, Dominic said firmly. The circumstances of your birth are nobody's business but ours. You would have my protection, my name if you want it, access to education and opportunities you've been denied. And enemies, Nico added, target on my back, people who'd hurt me to get to you. Yes, Dominic acknowledged, but also the means to protect yourself. Training, security, the full weight of the Castellano name behind you. No one touches what's mine without consequences. The possessiveness in his voice was familiar. I'd been on the receiving end of it for 6 years. But hearing it directed at Nico, seeing the answering flicker of longing in the boy's eyes, made something ease in my chest. I need time, Nico said finally, to think, to decide if I can do this. Of course, Dominic agreed immediately. Take all the time you need, but stay here while you decide. Let us prove that we mean what we say. Nico's gaze shifted to me. And you? How do you feel about your husband's bastard living under your roof? The word was a test, sharp-edged and deliberate. I met his eyes steadily. I feel grateful that my husband's son is a man of honor who saved my life. I feel heartbroken that he grew up without the advantages he deserved, and I feel hopeful that we might build something real from the ashes of past mistakes. Pretty words, Nico murmured, but there was less venom in it. Isabella means them, Dominic said. She has the rarest gift. She sees people for who they truly are, not just who they appear to be. It's why I fell in love with her. And it's why she recognized your worth before any of us knew the truth. I moved to Nico's chair, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. Stay, I said simply. Not because of blood or obligation, but because you belong here. Because Maria would be heartbroken if you left. Because Anthony has more to teach you about cars. Because despite everything, this has become your home. And if I can't forgive him? Nico asked, his voice small. If I can't get past what he did? Then we'll deal with that together, I promised. Forgiveness isn't required for family. Sometimes it's enough just to move forward. Dominic cleared his throat. There's something else. Your mother, Sophia. I had her buried in Woodlawn Cemetery. I didn't know about you, but I made sure she was taken care of. There's a headstone. I could take you if you wanted. Nico's composure finally cracked. A sob escaped him, raw and painful. You buried her? I couldn't let her have a pauper's grave, Dominic said quietly. Whatever happened between us, she deserved dignity in death. I looked for her, Nico whispered. In the mass graves, the unnamed plots. I couldn't find her. Thought they'd just thrown her away like garbage. I pulled him against me as he broke, 17 years of grief pouring out in waves. Over his shaking shoulders, I met Dominic's eyes. There was pain there, and regret. but also determination. We would make this work. Somehow we would forge a family from these broken pieces. Later that evening, after Nico had retreated to his room emotionally exhausted, Dominic and I sat in our bedroom, the first time we'd been truly alone since the revelation. "You could have told me," I said quietly, "about Sophia, about the possibility of a child." "There was no possibility in my mind," he replied. "She was gone. The past was past. I was building a future with you. A future built on lies." "Omission," he corrected, then sighed. "No, you're right. Lies. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that what you didn't know couldn't hurt us. But every lie we tell ourselves eventually comes due." "He looks just like you," I observed. "How did you stand it, seeing him every day and saying nothing?" "By telling myself I was protecting him, that acknowledging him would put him in danger. But the truth..." Dominic's voice dropped. "I was a coward, afraid of losing you, afraid of facing what I'd done. It was easier to let him remain the helpful stranger than to confront my failures as a man. And now? Now I have a son who hates me, a wife who may never trust me again, and a debt I can never fully repay." He took my hand carefully. "But I also have a chance to be better, to give him what I should have given him from the start. If you'll help me." "You know I will," I said. "Not for you, for him. That boy deserves every chance at happiness." "And us?" Dominic asked. "What do I deserve from you?" I considered the question. 6 years of marriage, of building a life together. The betrayal cut deep, but it predated our relationship. And the man beside me now wasn't the same selfish 24-year-old who had abandoned Sophia. "You deserve the chance to prove you've changed," I said finally. "To show that the man who'll fight for his son is worth forgiving. But Dominic, if there are other secrets, other children..." "There's nothing," he swore. "Sophia was the only indiscretion before you. And after you, there's been no one. How could there be, when you are everything?" "Everything except the mother of your firstborn," I pointed out. "That pain is yours to inflict as often as you need," he acknowledged. "I won't defend myself. But Isabella, you are the mother of my son in every way that matters now. He trusts you, responds to you. If we're going to make this work, it'll be because of you, not me." The weight of that responsibility settled on my shoulders. A 17-year-old boy who'd raised himself, now looking to me for guidance and navigating a world he'd never imagined entering. A husband trying to atone for past sins, a family stitched together from pain and secrets, and tentative hope. "We'll make it work," I said, meaning it. "All of us. Together." 8 months. That's how long it took for the fragile threads we'd woven to strengthen into something resembling a real family. 8 months of Nico slowly dropping his defenses, of Dominic learning to be a father to a son who'd grown up without him, of me playing mediator and bridge between two stubborn Castellano men. The transformation hadn't been smooth. There were setbacks. Nico disappearing for 3 days after a particularly harsh argument with Dominic about his future, returning with bruised knuckles and a split lip from fighting his way through his old neighborhood. The time Dominic's enemies discovered his weakness and tried to grab Nico from his new private school, only to find the boy had inherited more than just his father's looks. He'd inherited the tactical mind and ruthless survival instinct, escaping his would-be kidnappers and leaving one with a broken arm. But there were victories too. The first time Nico called Dominic Dad, accidentally during a heated discussion about college applications. The way he'd started shadowing Dominic during legitimate business meetings, absorbing everything with that sharp intelligence. How he'd taken to protecting me with the same fierce loyalty he'd shown from the beginning, now enhanced by the resources and training Dominic provided. I stood in the nursery now, one hand on my swollen belly, watching through the window as Nico and Dominic sparred in the gym Dominic had built specifically for training his son. 8 months pregnant, and I still marveled at how different this pregnancy felt from the secret Nico's mother must have carried. I had the best doctors, every comfort. A husband who treated me like spun glass. Everything Sophia had been denied. "You're dropping your left shoulder," Dominic instructed, circling Nico with predatory grace. "Telegraph your moves like that on the street and—" Nico's fist caught him mid-sentence. A perfect feint that had Dominic stumbling back, pride and surprise warring on his face. "You were saying?" Nico grinned, bouncing on his toes with youthful cockiness. "I was saying," Dominic recovered, launching his own attack. Arrogance is just another weakness to exploit. They were beautiful together, I realized. Not just in their physical resemblance, though that was striking, but in the way they'd learned each other's rhythms. The wariness hadn't completely faded, might never fully disappear, but it had transformed into something productive. Mutual respect, perhaps. The beginning of love. "Mrs. Castellano?" Maria appeared in the doorway, her face creased with concern. "There's someone at the gate. Says his name is Detective Morrison. He's asking about an incident from 8 months ago." My blood chilled. The night I was shot. We'd managed to keep the police out of it, Dominic's connections ensuring no official investigation. But now... "I'll handle it," I said, though at 8 months pregnant, handling anything was becoming increasingly difficult. "Tell him I'll be down shortly. Mr. Castellano is in the middle of something important," I finished. "I can manage a conversation, Maria." Detective Morrison was waiting in the front parlor, a man in his 50s with the weary look of someone who'd seen too much of the city's darkness. He stood when I entered, his eyes immediately cataloging my condition. "Mrs. Castellano, thank you for seeing me. I apologize for the intrusion, especially given your condition." "How can I help you, Detective?" I lowered myself carefully onto the settee, every movement calculated to project calm despite my racing heart. 8 months ago, there was an incident outside of Paradiso restaurant. Multiple gunshots fired, blood evidence at the scene, but no victims reported. No hospital admissions matching the blood loss indicated by forensics. His eyes were keen, watching for any reaction. Witnesses reported a young man carrying an injured woman from the scene. "How frightening," I murmured. "Thank goodness no one was seriously hurt." "That's just it, Mrs. Castellano. Someone was hurt, badly. The blood evidence suggests life-threatening injury. Yet no one came forward. No body was found." He leaned forward slightly. "Your husband dines frequently at Paradiso. You match the description of the injured woman." "I'm sure many women match a vague description from traumatized witnesses at night," I pointed out. "Perhaps. But then there's this." He produced a photograph, grainy security footage from a building adjacent to the restaurant. It showed Nico carrying me, my blood-soaked dress unmistakable even in the poor-quality image. The young man. We've identified him as Nico Ricci, former street youth with a minor record for theft and assault. Interesting that he now lives at this address. The door burst open before I could respond. Nico stood there, still in his workout clothes, face flushed with exertion and alarm. His eyes went immediately to Morrison, cataloging threat levels with the instinct of someone who'd survived by reading danger. "Isabella? Everything okay?" He moved to my side, protective instincts in overdrive. "You should be resting." Morrison's eyes sharpened with interest. "Mr. Ricci, I presume? I was just asking Mrs. Castellano about the night you saved her life." "I don't know what you're talking about," Nico said flatly. "No? Because I have witnesses who say you carried a woman matching Mrs. Castellano's description to an underground medical facility, that you refused to leave her side. Very heroic for a stranger." Morrison's tone suggested he knew exactly how unstrange we were to each other. "Detective Morrison." Dominic's voice from the doorway was dangerously calm. "I wasn't aware we had an appointment." Morrison didn't flinch at the implied threat. "Just following up on an old case. Your wife and son were being very helpful." Son. The word hung in the air like a challenge. We'd been careful about Nico's introduction to society, but clearly not careful enough. My son was ensuring my pregnant wife wasn't being unnecessarily stressed, Dominic said smoothly, as any good son would. "Now, unless you have a warrant." "No warrant," Morrison admitted, standing. "Just questions. About that night. About young Mr. Ricci's sudden change in circumstances. About a lot of things that don't quite add up. Life rarely adds up to men who see conspiracies in coincidence," Dominic observed. "Nico saved my wife's life. We're grateful. We offered him opportunities he'd been denied. Is it so strange that good deeds might be rewarded?" "Not strange at all. Unless those good deeds were planned. Unless the hero knew exactly who he was saving." Morrison moved toward the door, then paused. "Funny thing about blood, Mr. Castellano. It tells stories." "The blood at that scene?" "Two types. Your wife's, certainly. But also a familial match. Father and son, the lab says." Nico tensed beside me, but Dominic's expression never changed. "How fascinating," Dominic said. "I wasn't aware the police ran such extensive tests on evidence from crimes that were never reported." "Oh, this case was reported?" Morrison smiled thinly. "By the Torelli family. Seems they lost 3 soldiers that night. They're very interested in finding out who was responsible." "The Torellis, our rivals, the ones who'd tried to kill me, who'd apparently lost men in the return fire from Dominic's security. This wasn't just about the shooting anymore." "I'm sure you'll extend them the same courtesy you've shown us," Dominic said. "Baseless questions and vague threats. Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife needs rest." Morrison left, but his presence lingered like smoke. We sat in tense silence until we heard his car pull away. "The Torellis know," I said quietly. "About Nico. About all of it." "They suspect," Dominic corrected, but his face was grim. "Suspicion and proof are different things." "They'll come for him," Nico said, his voice steady despite the fear I could see in his eyes. "To get to you. That's what you warned me about, isn't it? The price of being a Castellano. Let them try." Dominic's voice went cold, deadly. "They failed to kill my wife. They won't get a second chance at my family." "Our family," I corrected, taking Nico's hand. "We protect each other. All of us." That night, I woke to voices in Dominic's study. I wrapped my robe around my expanded form and padded down the hallway, pausing at the partially open door. "Can't let them use him against us," Dominic was saying. "So what, you ship me away?" Nico's voice was bitter. "Pretend the last 8 months never happened." "No," Dominic's response was firm. "Never again. But we need to be smart. The Torellis smell blood. They'll push until something breaks." "Then let them push," Nico said. "I'm not running. Not from them. Not from this family. You made me a Castellano. Now let me act like one." "You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly." I could hear Nico moving, pacing probably. "I understand that they tried to kill Isabella. That they'll try again if they think it'll hurt you. That every moment we wait gives them time to plan." "What are you suggesting?" Dominic's voice was carefully neutral. "I'm suggesting," Nico said slowly, "that the son of Dominic Castellano wouldn't wait to be attacked. He'd send a message, make it clear that the family is off limits." The silence stretched. I held my breath, knowing this was a pivotal moment. Nico wasn't just accepting his place in the family. He was embracing the darker aspects of what that meant. "You're 17, Dominic finally said. "I've been a man since I was 10, Nico countered, "since I buried my mother alone. Don't treat me like a child now." "If you do this," Dominic's voice was heavy, "there's no going back. Blood on your hands changes you." "My hands haven't been clean since I was 12, Nico said quietly. "The only difference now is I'd be spilling blood for family instead of survival." I pushed open the door, making my presence known. Both men turned to me, mirror images of Castellano stubbornness. "No," I said firmly. "We're not having this conversation. Not now. Not with my baby due in weeks." "Isabella," Dominic began. "No," I repeated. 8 months ago, I was shot because of this feud. I won't have my son planning violence while his sibling prepares to enter this world." I looked at Nico. "You want to be a Castellano? Then understand this. Family comes first. And right now, family needs peace, not war." Something in my tone must have reached them. Nico's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Dominic moved to my side, his hand gentle on my back. "You're right," he murmured. "Of course you're right." "The Torellis," Nico started. "Will be handled," Dominic finished. "But not tonight. And not by you. Not yet." 3 weeks later, I lay in a private hospital room, exhausted but euphoric, watching Nico hold his baby sister for the first time. His hands, the same hands that had saved my life, cradled her with infinite gentleness. "She's so small," he whispered, wonder replacing his usual wariness. "You'll protect her," I said. It wasn't a question. "With my life," he vowed, and I heard Dominic's influence in the solemnity of the promise. Dominic stood beside them, one hand on Nico's shoulder, watching his children together. The past 8 months had aged him, silver threading more prominently through his hair. But there was a peace in his expression I'd never seen before. "What's her name?" Nico asked, never taking his eyes off his sister. I exchanged glances with Dominic. We'd discussed this, argued about it, finally agreed. "Sofia," I said quietly. "Sofia Isabella Castellano." Nico's head snapped up, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You named her after a woman who raised an extraordinary son," I finished. "A woman who deserved better than she got. A woman whose memory deserves to live on in happier circumstances." The tears came then, silent trails down Nico's face as he held his sister closer. "She would have loved this," he whispered. "All of it, even him." A nod toward Dominic. "She never stopped loving him." "I know," Dominic said roughly, "and I'll spend the rest of my life ensuring both her children know they're loved, that they're wanted, that they're family." A knock interrupted the moment. Detective Morrison stood in the doorway, a bouquet of flowers in his hand, and an unreadable expression on his face. "Congratulations," he said, entering uninvited. "A beautiful family. Complete now, I suppose." "Detective," Dominic's voice held warning. "This is a private moment. Of course, I just wanted to let you know the Torelli case has been closed. Lack of evidence. Funny thing, all 3 of their men who died that night, turned out they had warrants in multiple jurisdictions. No one's particularly motivated to investigate their deaths." I studied Morrison's face, understanding dawning. "You knew all along." He shrugged. "I know a lot of things, Mrs. Castellano. I know a 17-year-old boy who grew up hard doesn't suddenly develop the skills to evade professional killers without good genes. I know blood evidence doesn't lie about family connections. And I know sometimes justice comes from unexpected places." "What do you want?" Dominic asked bluntly. "Nothing. Today." Morrison placed the flowers on a side table, But someday, Mr. Castellano, I might need a favor. Something that serves real justice, not just the law. And on that day, I hope your son, both your children, remember that I could have made their lives very difficult and chose not to. He left without waiting for a response. We sat in silence, processing the implications. He knows everything, Nico said finally. He knows enough, Dominic corrected, but he's choosing to leave us in peace. For now. Because he sees what we have, I said, looking at my family, my complicated, dangerous, beloved family. He sees that sometimes redemption comes from the most unexpected places. That sometimes a family forged in blood and secrets is stronger than one built on lies. Baby Sophia stirred in Nico's arms, making a soft sound of contentment. He adjusted his hold automatically, naturally, as if he'd been born to be a big brother. She'll never know hunger, he said softly. Never wonder if she's wanted. Never doubt she's loved. Neither will you, I reminded him. Not anymore, not ever again. Dominic moved closer, his arm encompassing all of us. My family, he murmured, and the possessiveness that once might have chafed now felt like a promise. A vow. A man who had failed his firstborn so spectacularly would move heaven and earth to never fail again. Later, as Dominic and Nico stepped out to handle some business, nothing violent, they assured me, just precautionary measures, I held my daughter and thought about the strange paths that lead to family. A year ago, I'd been shot outside a restaurant, saved by a stranger who turned out to be anything but. Now that stranger was my son in all but birth, fiercely protective of the sister he'd waited 17 years to have. Your brother saved my life, I whispered to Sophia. And in doing so, he saved us all. Your father from his past, me from my ignorance, and himself from a future alone. She yawned, unimpressed by the philosophical musings, and I laughed softly. She would grow up surrounded by love, protected by a father who'd learned from his mistakes, and a brother who'd survived the worst life could offer. The shadows of our world would touch her, inevitably, but she would never face them alone. None of us would. Not anymore. When visiting hours ended and the room was quiet except for Sophia's gentle breathing, I closed my eyes and let peace wash over me. 8 months ago, I'd bled on a sidewalk while my husband froze and a stranger acted. That stranger had become my son. That crisis had revealed old sins and offered new redemption. That violence had ultimately led to this. A family stitched together from painful truths and second chances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Torellis might be quiet for now, but they wouldn't stay that way. Morrison's future favor hung like a sword overhead, and Nico would eventually have to decide how deep into his father's world he was willing to go. But tonight, we were complete. Tonight we were family, and that was enough. That was everything.